How does a US colonel vanish behind enemy lines in Iran for 36 hours, surrounded by hundreds of Revolutionary Guard troops with a bounty on his head, wounded, hiding in a crack in the rock at 2,000 meters altitude, and still make it home alive without ever activating a single distress signal? The answer comes down to one of the most classified pieces of technology the United States has ever deployed in a combat zone. A system that doesn't need radio frequencies, doesn't need heat signatures, doesn't need satellites. It needs only one thing: a heartbeat. An F-15E Strike Eagle goes down over Isfahan province. One crew member is rescued within hours. The other disappears into the mountains. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard floods the area with troops. A provincial governor puts a public price on his head. And 64 kilometers away, a CIA aircraft quietly locks onto the electromagnetic signature of a single human heart beating inside a rock fissure. But when the extraction team finally reached him, everything went sideways in a way nobody planned for. This is Stage 1, April 3rd, 2026, Friday, just after local noon over Isfahan province in southern Iran. A U.S. Air Force F-15E Strike Eagle belonging to the 494th Expeditionary Fighter Squadron is hit by Iranian air defense systems. The aircraft goes down fast. 2 crew members are aboard, the pilot and the weapons systems officer, or WSO. Look at the map here. Isfahan province sits deep in the Iranian interior, roughly 340 kilometers south of Tehran, a region dominated by the Zagros mountain range to the west and heavily patrolled by Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps ground forces. This is not a place where Americans operate. This is not a place where Americans survive undetected. The pilot ejects first. U.S. military helicopters, already positioned in the region as part of ongoing operational posture, recover him within hours. That part of the mission goes as planned. But the WSO, identified only by his tactical call sign, Dude 44 Bravo, and later described by President Donald Trump as a colonel, ejects separately and lands deep inside hostile territory. Despite injuries sustained during ejection, he does what his survival training demanded. He moves, he climbs, he hides. Over the next several hours, Dude 44 Bravo ascends a mountain ridge to over 2,000 meters of altitude, finds a narrow fissure in the rock face, and goes completely silent. He is now invisible. And that invisibility is both his greatest asset and his most dangerous problem. This is Stage 2. By the time Iranian search operations begin in earnest, Dude 44 Bravo has been missing for several hours. The IRGC mobilizes ground units across the province. Local militias are activated. Provincial security forces begin systematic sweeps of the terrain. And then the local governor makes a move that confirms the seriousness of the situation. He publicly promises a financial reward for anyone who captures or kills the American officer. This is not a standard military search operation. This is a manhunt with financial incentive distributed across the entire local population. Every shepherd, every farmer, every vehicle on a mountain road becomes a potential threat. Inside his rock crevice, Dude 44 Bravo has a pistol, a survival kit, and a Boeing CSEL, a combat survivor evader locator beacon. Under normal circumstances, that beacon is the lifeline. Activate it, transmit your GPS coordinates, wait for extraction. But here is the problem. Here is the impossible choice he faces. Iranian electronic warfare units are actively scanning the electromagnetic spectrum in the search area. The moment that CSEL transmits, the signal doesn't just reach US forces, it reaches every Iranian receiver in range. Activating the beacon means revealing his exact position to the same forces hunting him. For 36 hours, he makes the decision to stay silent. No signal, no contact, no confirmation that he is even alive. From the US side, intelligence has no confirmed visual, no radio intercept, no satellite imagery pinpointing one man in a mountain crevice. Conventional intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, ISR, is not enough. Something else is needed. This is Stage 3. The CIA activates Ghost Murmur. At this point in the operation, the name itself tells you something. In clinical medicine, a murmur is an abnormal sound produced by the heart, detectable only with a stethoscope pressed directly against the chest. Ghost references something that has disappeared, something the conventional world cannot see. Put them together and you get the operational concept, finding a ghost by the sound of his heart. The system, developed by Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works division, the same classified advanced development unit that produced the U-2 spy plane in the 1950s, the SR-71 Blackbird, the F-117 Nighthawk stealth aircraft, the F-22 Raptor, and the F-35 Lightning II, Ghost Murmur represents the next generation of that legacy, not an aircraft, not a missile. A sensor system so precise it can detect the electromagnetic signature of a human heartbeat at a distance of over 64 kilometers. CIA Director John Ratcliffe summarized the outcome at a White House briefing with 6 words: "The kernel was invisible to the enemy, but not to the CIA." President Trump confirmed the detection range publicly, approximately 40 miles. That is 64 kilometers. That is the distance from the center of a major city to its outermost suburbs. And across that distance, Ghost Murmur isolated one heartbeat from an entire mountain range. To understand how this is even physically possible, we need to pause the narrative and crack this system open. The human heart generates an electromagnetic field. This is not science fiction. It is basic cardiac physiology. The electrical activity that triggers each heartbeat produces a measurable magnetic field extending outward from the body. In a clinical setting, this field is captured using magnetocardiography with sensors placed directly on the patient's chest. The field strength at that range measures approximately 50 picoteslas. For reference, the Earth's own magnetic field measures around 50 microteslas, 1 million times stronger. Detecting a human heartbeat at distance is, in conventional terms, like trying to hear a whisper inside a stadium during a championship game. Ghost Murmur solves this problem through nitrogen vacancy centers. Look at this diagram. Inside a synthetic diamond crystal, individual carbon atoms are replaced at specific lattice positions. First by a nitrogen atom, then by an adjacent vacancy where no atom exists at all. This nitrogen vacancy center, or NV center, is extraordinarily sensitive to changes in magnetic fields at the quantum level. When exposed to a magnetic field as weak as a human heartbeat, the electrons in the NV center shift their quantum spin state in a measurable way. Arrays of these synthetic diamond sensors, cooled and shielded, can detect magnetic field variations at the picotesla range, the exact range of cardiac electromagnetic output. But detection at close range is one thing. Detection at 64 kilometers across open terrain, with wind, geological magnetic variation, livestock, vehicles, and dozens of other electromagnetic sources generating noise, that requires the second component of Ghost Murmur: artificial intelligence. The sensor array, mounted on Black Hawk helicopters operating at altitude, feeds continuous raw magnetic field data into an AI processing layer. That layer runs pattern recognition algorithms trained specifically on human cardiac signatures, the rhythmic, directional, frequency-specific pattern of a beating heart, and filters it against the background electromagnetic environment. One source described the result to the New York Post as hearing one specific voice in a stadium, except the stadium is 2,500 square kilometers of Iranian desert. The AI doesn't just detect a heartbeat, it isolates it, maps it, produces a GPS-level coordinate from it. No radio, no infrared, no movement required from the person being located, just the involuntary, unstoppable electrical rhythm of a living heart. Sponsor section, insert here. This is stage 4. Ghost Murmur has done its job. The kernel's position is confirmed. Alive, stationary, inside a rock formation at elevation in Isfahan province. The CIA now has a coordinate. What it needs next is a deception. Because simply flying helicopters into the confirmed extraction zone would alert Iranian forces scanning the airspace and potentially trigger a response before the team reaches the target. The CIA runs a parallel information operation, broadcasting false signals and feeding disinformation through monitored channels, suggesting that the American officer is being extracted overland, moving toward the western border. IRGC commanders shift resources. Search patterns redirect. The mountain zone, for a critical window of hours, becomes relatively less saturated with Iranian ground forces. In the early hours of Sunday, April 5th, approximately 36 hours after the shootdown, U.S. Special Operations Commandos infiltrate Iranian territory. The exact insertion method has not been officially confirmed, but the force moves to Dude 44 Bravo's position, engages Iranian forces at distance during the approach, and reaches the rock crevice. The colonel is alive. He is wounded. He is extracted. But this is where the curveball hits. 2 aircraft used in the rescue operation become stranded at the extraction point. The precise circumstances, mechanical failure, terrain, hostile fire, have not been fully disclosed. But the consequence is immediate and non-negotiable. Those aircraft carry classified avionics. They carry equipment related to the Ghost Murmur operation, leaving them intact on Iranian soil, where IRGC technical teams and, through them, Russian and Chinese intelligence services would have immediate access, is not an option. The order is given. U.S. forces detonate their own aircraft on Iranian territory. The extraction team completes the withdrawal on foot under fire. 2 planes burned, 0 Americans lost. The colonel is airlifted to Kuwait for medical treatment. The IRGC, which deployed hundreds of personnel across Isfahan province for 36 hours, never located him. The Ghost Murmur did in a matter of hours what an entire Iranian military apparatus could not do with boots on the ground, financial incentives distributed to the local population, and full regional access. The aftermath reverberates beyond the immediate rescue. The Iranian state media had already published imagery of the F-15E wreckage, a propaganda win. But the successful extraction of the crew member they were actively hunting undermines that narrative completely. The Revolutionary Guard mounted a publicly announced manhunt, offered money for his capture, flooded the area with forces, and the American walked out of a rock crevice and flew to Kuwait. The broader strategic implication is not subtle. The U.S. government did not accidentally allow Ghost Murmur details to become public. The United States has a documented history of selectively revealing classified capabilities. The U-2 became public after Francis Gary Powers was shot down in 1960. The stealth program became public after the F-117 flew in combat, and drone warfare became public after years of classified operations. Ghost Murmur's revelation follows the same pattern. It is a message, addressed not to the American public, but to every military planner in Tehran, Moscow, Beijing, and Pyongyang, who is calculating the risk-reward ratio of shooting down a U.S. aircraft. For decades, the calculus was straightforward. Shoot down the aircraft, capture or kill the crew, generate propaganda, gain leverage. Ghost Murmur breaks that equation. The aircraft going down is no longer the end of the operation. It is potentially the beginning of a scenario where quantum sensor arrays are already scanning for the cardiac signatures of ejected crew members before the wreckage hits the ground. Where AI systems are filtering mountains of electromagnetic noise to isolate one heartbeat. Where deception operations are already running while the search party is still forming. And there is one more dimension to this that gets overlooked in the immediate coverage. Ghost Murmur, according to sources cited by the American press, has already been successfully tested on Black Hawk helicopters and is under evaluation for integration into F-35 platforms. That means the system is not a one-time emergency deployment pulled from a classified shelf for a single rescue. It is entering operational service. It is being embedded into the aircraft that U.S. allies fly. It is becoming a standard feature of how the United States conducts personnel recovery operations in hostile territory. The Skunk Works division of Lockheed Martin has been operating since 1943. In 8 decades, it produced the aircraft that defined the limits of what was considered possible in aviation. Planes that flew higher, faster, and more invisibly than anything the world had seen. Ghost Murmur is not an aircraft, but it belongs to exactly that lineage. It is a system that does something previously considered impossible, at a scale previously considered physically unreachable, using materials, synthetic diamond crystals, that most people associate with jewelry rather than quantum sensors in a combat helicopter. If your heart is beating, the CIA can find you. That sentence, simple as it sounds, represents a fundamental shift in the strategic value of shooting down a US aircraft. The plane can be destroyed. The crew cannot be hidden. And that changes everything about what it means to be downed in enemy territory, and everything about what it costs an adversary to put you there. We make original videos from scratch and animated by humans. So please subscribe to not miss a